Next broadcast. This is All India Radio. Our next broadcast follows.
This is All India Radio. You will now hear comments from the press. The Times of India, in its editorial titled "No More Palliatives," writes, Reserve Bank of India's Monetary Policy Committee yesterday surprised financial markets by keeping the repo rate unchanged at 5.15%. There was widespread expectation that the interest rate would be lowered to combat the economic slowdown. But in defying popular expectation and in the attendant explanation, the committee sent a couple of messages which are sobering. We are unlikely to record a quick and sharp recovery from the ongoing slowdown. Moreover, the general consumer price level is expected to rise over the next few months following an increase in food prices. RBI has revised downwards its GDP forecast for 2019-20 announced in October from 6.1% to 5%. This suggests that the second half of the current fiscal is unlikely to see a significant bounce back in economic growth. In the wake of policy rate cuts between February and October and government's fiscal measures 2 months ago, the structural nature of the current slowdown is clear from the forecasts. Indicators of rural demand such as sales of tractors and motorcycles remain weak. RBI's survey shows that capacity utilization in manufacturing has declined since the beginning of this year. Shaky NBFCs have emerged as a potential threat to financial stability, but RBI Governor Shaktikant Das promised that the central bank will not allow any large NBFC to collapse. Simultaneously, measures to strengthen urban cooperative banks were announced. An outcome of weak consumer demand and slow-paced growth is the stress it puts on government's revenue targets. Unsurprisingly, GST collections this year are disappointing, and some states complained that there has been a delay in government releasing tax dues. The next monetary policy is scheduled after the forthcoming union budget. In this period, the government should evolve a coherent blueprint for structural reforms to make the economy more competitive. The evidence now is overwhelming that the current slowdown needs more than fiscal concessions. India needs an environment which encourages investment. The Economic Times, in its editorial titled "A Royal Display of Common Sense," says the King and Queen of Sweden really should not set embarrassing precedents, as it makes the lives of VIPs infinitely harder than they already are. Hopping onto the next available commercial flight to India, carrying their own hand baggage, that too just because the official jet had problems, may be the politically advantageous thing to do, but it may well be cited as a precedent to compel other globe-trotting notables to trim their travel budgets and carbon emissions. If crowned heads start evincing such plebeian concerns as expenses and global warming, mere heads of states and governments can hardly consider themselves immune hereinafter. Some things survive by convention, after all, not log. Of course, the prospect of earning an ear-tingling, thunderous "How dare you" from the most famous Swede right now could have also had a hand in King Carl XVI, Gustav and Queen Sylvia making this commendable gesture. Reprimands from other VIPs irked by their austerity would be far less daunting than a riposte from the teenage Swedish force of nature. The Indian Express, in its editorial title "Exit of Goose," writes, in his own assessment, Bob Willis was a born pessimist. Before every test match, he would run his blue eyes over the newspapers, looking for pieces that criticized him. 2 days before his greatest feat in Test cricket, an 8/43 demolition of Australia's, he devoured the criticism of his bowling. He had gone wicketless on a helpful surface and was reading stringing critiques the next day in the newspapers. "I thought this would be the last time I would play for England," he later revealed. He shied away from the limelight, rarely parted, barely hogged the headlines for feats beside his exploits with the ball, turned down lucrative offers to join the Kerry Packer series and a rebel tour to South Africa. He didn't have a repertoire of tricks, had what the great Freddie Truman observed to be an ugly action akin to the flapping of a goose, hence the nickname Goose, a meandering run-up, a frail body, wonky ankles, and long limbs. But what he had was the natural pace and deep reservoirs of determination and unflappability, which forged a terrific, if unsung career as the haul of 325 wickets at an average of 25.20 in 90 tests would testify. He could never purchase a 10-4, but several of his 16 5-4s have come in trying circumstances and unforgiving conditions. None was as memorable as his effort in Bangalore when he ripped through a strong Indian middle order and returned with 6 for 53. Those were the comments from